Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric, and happy December 1st, 2023. I have this little corner of my house decorated for Christmas. You might notice two new little wall hangings that are there. I will show a picture up close so that you can see their designs. I've been busy working on getting those ready for this video. And that's why, one of the reasons why, the rest of the house is nowhere close to being decorated for Christmas. I plan, as soon as I have this video recorded and uploaded, I plan to dig in full steam ahead and decorate. One of the other things that have held us back from decorating for Christmas, we usually like to have everything up by December 1st. But this year we're working on building a storage shed / tiny house in our backyard, and that has taken a little bit higher priority to getting the Christmas tree up. So I'm hoping that by the end of the weekend I have the Christmas tree up, the decorations are up, maybe all the wall hangings are up, and by the time I record next week we will be doing that from a decorated, not just a corner of the house, but a fully decorated house for Christmas. So this week, in the spirit again of more Christmas decorations, I have a couple things to share with you. The block of the week, my English paper piecing block of the week that I'm sharing, it is called the Wagon Wheel. I actually did look it up, and I will show it at the end. It is an interesting one. I've done it up in the vintage fabrics that I'm using for this project. But it is a block that could easily be turned into something festive if you wanted to. You could make it out of wintry fabrics, or you could make it out of Christmas red and greens. So we'll show you that in a moment. Make sure you check out my my blog, Pithy Ponderings. I will have that pattern, and I should have it in a couple different colorways in the pattern so that you can see its holiday look. In addition to that, I have a sneak peek at one of the blocks that I am making for a winter-inspired English paper piecing wall hanging. I'll share that with you in a moment. But let's first start with the craft of the week, the Christmas craft or holiday craft of the week. I've been excited to bring this one. I talked about this when I was talking about projects a few weeks ago. I shared a couple mug rugs, but I wanted to have it as its own as its own theme. So I have it in my little Christmas box. So a mug rug is basically usually, well, a mug rug is a modern take on the standard old-fashioned coaster that you put down on your table or your surfaces, especially if they're wood surfaces. If you're wanting to protect them from hot beverages, from sweaty glasses in the summer, when I know when we get really hot and humid, a cold beverage will sweat. And so you put down the coaster to protect the surfaces. Now that's a traditional concept of it. But the mug rug, it's a little bit more, it's a little different. Think of it like a tiny placemat for your mug, especially now that we have mugs from tiny mugs to gigantic mugs. A mug rug is something that you put under your mug, but you can use it as a little bit of a placemat because it can go into the wash. So I know some people will make them larger, some people will make them smaller, excuse me, and some people will actually use them as a mini placemat. So you have your mug of maybe hot chocolate and maybe a little cookie, and it will catch the crumbs. So depending on how big or small you make them, they can either be the standard coaster and protect your surface, or they can be a mini placemat, or even a little bit of a hot pad to protect your surface or you from the crumbs or an extremely hot bowl of soup. I use my mug rugs to put plates of food on when I'm at my computer, when I'm having a little snack, a bowl of soup, which I've actually made cozies for I have these small bowls and I actually make cozies for them. So the first coasters / mug rugs that I made a number of years ago were crocheted rather than the quilted ones that I'll show you. So this is just starting from the center and spiraling out little crochet coasters. And again, you make them as big or as small as you want. I have these all over the house. I have them sitting basically anywhere that I sit down that I might be drinking a beverage, because while they're wonderful to protect surfaces, for me, for some reason, placing a glass or a ceramic item, a hard item, I don't know if you can hear that, but I believe there is a bird outside on the window behind me pecking at the glass. And my cat has just dashed over there to see what it's doing. I apologize. It's just going to be, every time I sit down to record, that's what happens. Something that is not happening otherwise, like a bird poking at my glass, my window, will happen. So back to these. So I have these all around the house because for me, there's something about setting a hard glass or ceramic item on a hard surface, whether it's tile or wood or whatever the material my desk is made out of. Setting that hard item down on a hard surface, it kind of, especially as I've gotten older, it kind of bugs me. There's something about it that just makes the hair on the back of my neck prickle, okay? So I started having these all around the house. So whenever I'm setting down a plate or, small plate, a snack for snack, or a mug of hot chocolate, or I have my big tumbler with a straw that I'm constantly, I carry everywhere with me. Whatever I'm setting down, I'm setting it down on a coaster, a mug rug. So I have these around the house, but I also have the quilted kind. And these can, of course, be done either high-tech with a embroidery machine, all in the hoop, or it can be done traditional manner, making tiny quilts. So the ones that I showed you the other day, when I was sharing about the log cabin block. So here are my two mug rugs. Okay, one was done with machine embroidery, and one was done traditional piecing. But you can make them any size. You can make them any shape. You can put embroidery on them. The big key is you want to have something that if you're going to set something down, it's fairly flat. Okay, this is not a place that you want to have a lot of bubbly texture. So these two, a square, a rectangle, both work. In this case, you could have a cup on top and have a little place for a snack. During the holidays, of course, people like to make them a little bit larger and have them for leaving out the cookies and milk for Santa. I personally, when it comes to anything larger, I tend to make my mug rugs usually only about, the maximum size is 6 inches by 6 inches. I've seen people go larger, but for me at that point, it's a placemat. But I also will have 2 or 3 on my desk. So one's holding my beverage, one may be holding a plate. But this is another, one more like little here that has an embroidery in it. This would also be a wonderful way of using fussy cutted fabric. Fussy cut meaning cutting out a pretty design and placing it in the center. You could do it applique, hand applique, but a little tiny quilt like that. But this is another place that it is just fabulous to use your scraps. So this is some fabric. The center fabric is some fabric I'm using for another project that I'll share here in the next few days or weeks. But I had a scrap of it because I was doing something, this will be a good example. I was doing another mug rug like this, and I didn't want the snowman fabric to show through the fabric I was putting on the top. So I actually would cut out this background. The way this is made is you place this rose fabric down, and then you stitch around just with a straight stitch, and then you place the fabric on top. That got the embroidery. Well, I didn't want to waste the fabric, this fabric that's beneath that pink. So I would, after the stitch goes down, before I put the pink fabric on, I would trim away, in essence, like a reverse applique. I would trim away the center. And that left me with a few, I have a few more. It left me with a few centers that I needed to do something with. So I just went and grabbed a bunch of my little scraps. And in this one, you can see there's little green scraps in the corners. This one you can barely see in that corner. And I went and I put some little, you can see little scraps in some of the corners. Then, not worrying about the thickness of my logs, following the concept that I shared with the log cabin, I just started, let's see if I sewed on a strip, sewed on a strip, sewed on a strip, and sewed on a strip until I had a border around my scrap, my fussy cut type scrap. So using the thin scraps that I have a tendency to cut off when I'm making bigger projects, and I trim it down before I turn it inside out, I was just using those little scraps, those little strips. And I now have, in various sizes, small mug rugs. So whether you are making, let's see, whether you are making a crochet mug rug or a quilted mug rug, whether you're using fancy techniques or just keeping it simple, I find these to be a really fabulous gift. Now, some of the people will ask, and this is a good question, do people use them? I use them throughout my house, and the people I've given them to have enjoyed them and used them as well. Sorry, we've had a lot of wind and cold that has come through, and I'm still dealing with a little bit. I'm worried that I'm going to have this kind of ongoing kind of congestion feeling, maybe all through the winter at this rate. But I feel great. I just don't sound the best. So the people I've talked to, they do use them. I think we're moving more towards that again as a society where, well, it's fun. And that's the thing. We like the whimsy. We want to bring in something joyful and fun. And this really helps, especially when you give it as a gift, when you give a mug and you fill it full of, I like to give, I make a hot chocolate, I make up my own hot chocolate powders where I mix a blend of dark Dutch processed chocolate or cocoa and a standard Hershey's cocoa. I'll mix the cocoa powders, mix in the sugar to my taste. I like it a little bit on the darker, less sweet. And I'll mix that together and I'll have a big batch of that I keep on hand. So I only have to put a couple scoops, put in the milk and heat it up and I'm ready to go. So sometimes I like to be able to give a gift that has the mug, it has the cocoa powder, maybe even some marshmallows, all put in, and then the mug rug as well. And the thing that's nice about it is, especially for people who maybe have an office job, this is a way to decorate your little space without bringing a lot of attention. And it works really well. When I make these, I always use a good, my batting scraps. So there's a lot of cotton in this. And some people will talk about trying to put a liner in it in order to prevent liquids from going all the way through. And I have dabbled with that. I know how to do that. But for the most part, I like to have them on hand. The truth is if you did get a small spill, you could soak up the spill with your mug rug and then just toss it into the wash and it's ready to go again. So I find it to be a really great gift. As I said, I love these. I have them everywhere. Because they kind of, when I do that last round, I won't have any increases. So it actually will curl up just a little bit and kind of hug my cup, my mug, the vessel. So I do think people like them. I do think that people use them, but they are fun to give as a gift. So there's my mug rugs. I hope that it inspires you to give something a try. Again, if you're a crocheter, this is just 100% cotton, crochet cotton dish towel, dishcloth cotton type, heavy, nice and thick, works up really fast. Great way to use up scraps and remnants. I have made them out of wool as well. That's another really good option for something like this. I have done some out of my hand spun. As I said, another really good way of using them. And you can make sets of these where you could make a trivet for your teapot or a snack bowl, but you could make a larger one with a set of small ones. So if you're looking for a quick and fun crochet or quilting project, I would suggest making yourself some mug rugs, and maybe a little bit larger placemat version. I think it's a fun thing, especially if you have friends that do game night, if you're big into Dungeons and Dragons and all of these kind of things. I think there's a lot of fun to be had in getting a set of mug rugs and coasters, mug rugs, maybe trivets, the placemats, hot pads, about 4 inches for the mug rug and about 6 to 8 inches for a centerpiece, and you're good to go for party night for the holidays or any other time for that matter. Okay, moving on, because I do want to have this a shorter video because I do need to decorate my house. This is the sneak peek. It is it is a design that I have put together, and this is the first block that I have finished putting together. It still has, I'll show you the back. It still has the cardboard in it, and it's a star block, and it is I think I'm calling it Frosty Fortitude is the name of the wall hanging. The next block in it is actually going to have a green evergreen in the center. And so while it may in a way be thought of as a Christmas wall hanging, I intend to have it as a winter winter wall hanging that I keep up through the months of December and January and maybe even February. Because for me, the evergreen doesn't just represent Christmas. It represents the continuation of life, even in harsh conditions. So that is my first block. I'll have another one of these stars, and then I'll have my evergreen block in the center. And I wanted to share that with you. It has been fun. I have done similar stars to this in the past using strip piecing techniques. I have never done anything like this with the English paper piecing. I have to tell you, I much prefer doing something like this with the English paper piecing. the precision, the ease, the comfort of doing it from my chair. It has really changed the way I look at quilting. Slowing down, not trying to have it finished really quickly, because I have done large stars for baby quilts and lap robes in the past. I've always loved the star blocks. So of all the ones I've done, this one has been the most enjoyable because I've been the most comfortable doing it. You'll notice, let's see, where is it? I have my little clips here. I started taking out the cardboard and realized, you know what? Nope. I'm going to leave the cardboard in because I'll sew all, just like when I did my falling leaves, I will sew the borders on by hand as well. So that one is done. And the wagon wheel. So this block, it's actually a hexagon, okay? And of course, I'm doing it in the vintage fabrics, okay? My hand-dyed yellow, but some vintage blue and yellow fabric. And it is a hexagon, okay? Very similar to the pumpkin, the jack-o'-lantern I did back in October. But if you do it in wintry fabric, and I'll post, I'm not going to show you, I'll post a picture here. If you do it all in wintry, like for instance, if I were to do it in these fabrics, this could very much look like a snowflake. So it changes, it really changes its look depending on the fabrics you use. I used a high contrast fabric because I am using the vintage fabrics and I'm trying to use enough of each one of them to make an overall quilt. But if you took this and you put it in this colorway, this color kind of combination, you would have a snowflake looking block. So that's something to think about. You could also very easily do this in reds and greens, and it could form the look of a wreath. It would be, I think, quite lovely. You could, well, that's the other thing. You can always substitute the center with a solid hexagon rather than, you know, the individual pieces. Or something to think about is to do each of these pieces in a cream, but so that they're each individual pieces, but they read the same color from a distance, and then do this in red and green, or red or green, and yes, you'd have a wreath. It's funny when you have it this way versus this way, it really changes the way it looks. Now, I will tell you also one more thing, and then we will wrap up. When I have been doing my English paper piecing, I am careful to sort my pieces into their colors. Like, for instance, so my dark blues, my whites, my light blues. But the pieces are usually exactly, you know, very much the same, okay, shapes and sizes. So I haven't had to do a lot of mapping them out other than knowing which piece goes where. When it came to this block, on the other hand, I actually took the time to write 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and onward. And on the templates that I provide in my pattern that I will have in my blog, I have actually written those numbers on to remind you. These are not all interchangeable. You really want to follow carefully which ones go with which, because it took a bit of doing. to lay this out when I didn't have them marked. Lay this out and get the right side, the correct sides with the correct sides, corresponding sides. My husband actually had to come and help me and twist a couple and say, okay, that looks like it's going to work. Oh, I was getting really worried because I had all the pieces cut out and I was like, I don't know how to put them together. So I've gone back into the pattern and I've put numbers so that you'll know which pieces go to which pieces. A little bit of fun. And that, as I said, one of the names that I found for that, it really is just a hexagon, but I did find that pattern listed as a wagon wheel. And I believe the date, I don't know if I have the date. Most of the patterns that I'm using, the original publications in the different magazines and newspapers, the different periodicals, most of them are dating to the late 1920s and the early 1930s. There was a huge push to have patterns with the magazines, the periodicals, especially as we had the Great Depression. It was a way to encourage the purchase of these. They had quilt patterns. They had patterns that you could use to take your scrap materials, to take the leftover pieces from the construction of your clothing, from other projects, and turn them into something useful. So a lot of quilt blocks were published in magazines, newspapers, periodicals during the 1920s, during the 1930s. And it was just a really big time for patchwork quilting. So this pattern is dated to around that time, called the wagon wheel. When the hexagon was turned into this block, who knows? And it comes in variations, as I said. I've seen it in my reference book where the center is solid, where the center is broken down. Again, it's a very traditional, very simple hexagon built from other pieces. All right, so I hope you are having a wonderful first day of December, or second or third day, depending on when you watch this. I hope you're taking time to unwind with some fiber and fabric. And I hope that you are feeling the holiday spirit rather than any other kind of feelings. We had a full moon this past week, and I felt as if the world was suffering from that full moon. So I hope that you are doing well. I am doing well despite my continued frog in my throat. I'm enjoying the process of helping my husband what little I can with the construction project. And I'm looking forward to getting my Christmas tree up and joining you next week with some more unwinding with fiber and fabric and some more craft projects that you might want to try. Until then, happy holidays and best wishes. We'll see you then.